sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dang war je pe dra no par je pe ge. Tarpa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Ma nam ka dam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dang drell nor du la na me pa yang dag par zog pe zhang ju brin po she do pa ja. Next is the action bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deshe du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. The Long Refuge Prayer. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Transcend Sawa Dangur Pa Je Pe Bao Dan La Ma Dam Pa Nam La Kab Su Chi O. Ye Dam Kil Gorgi La Sok Nam La Kab Su Chi O. Sangye Chom Den De Nam La Kab Su Chi O. Dam Pe Cho Nam La Kab Su Chi O. Pa Pe Ge Du Nam La Kab Su Chi O. Pa Wo Ka Dro Cho Kyong Song Me Song Yes She Gi Chang Dang Dem Ba Nam La Kab Su Chi O. Now we go to page 4, taking the Bodhisattva vow. So last week I didn't explain this, so I'll take just a minute and explain this a little bit. So the Bodhisattva is the holy enlightened being. Bodhi means enlightenment. Sat is a being, and Va is a holy being. So it's the holy and enlightened holy being. So as we put ourselves on the path to become a bodhisattva, one stage or many stages that we go through is as a bodhisattva, and we progress along purifying as we go. So we're taking this vow to practice the body, speech, and mind, the Dharma of the Buddha. So it says, until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I'll continue to take refuge in all the Buddhas and the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. So this is the visualization. We take refuge with this. And then it says, as the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path. So what this is saying is that for the Buddhas to become Buddhas, they had themselves to have to go along this pathway themselves to become Bodhisattvas. And they started out as human beings. This is a human being pathway. So, so this should give us confidence to say, oh, this is the way all the Buddhas have done it. This is the way I shall do it. And then it says, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. So we say that for the benefit of all sentient beings, everything, our motivation is for the benefit of the enlightenment of other sentient beings, that I will apply myself to this pathway and to accomplish the stages of the path. So we go through, what those accumulations are, pathways are made of, what the signposts are, so to speak, what the accomplishments are. This is what we do through our practices. We begin by identifying many of these in 101, but then as we progress along with doing other practices, more complicated practices, then we see as we're building our way along that pathway. So we recite this now twice in English and once in the Tibetan. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shangzhu Ningpo Chi Ki Bar Sangye Namla Kapsu Chi Chodang Shangzhu Sampa Yi Soklang Deshen Kapsu Chi Jitar Nonggi Deshegi Shangzhu Togni Ke Padan Shangzhu Sampe La Pala De Dagrim Shen E Patar De Shindro La Pandandu Shangzhu Samni Ke Gishing De Shindu Ni La Pala Rimpa Shindu La Pa Ji O. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chodnamla Shangzhu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Jin Soki Pe Sonamgi Chola Penshir Sangye Jupa Sho. Now, page 6, the four immeasurables. These are the four vast immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dempa jurchi. Dog now dang de now gi gudang drawar jurchi. Dog now me pe dewa dang mi drawar jurchi. May ring chak dang ni dang dra wei tang namla ne pa chi. Okay, thank you very much. So those are the opening prayers to set our motivation for this evening. So welcome, Alice and Zara. I see that you're here, so thank you very much for coming. And if you look in the chat, there is a PDF. If you want to download that, you can print that. We're going to follow that tonight. I'm going to put it up on the screen, so you don't have to put it up on your screen. We'll do it on mine, and you'll see it on yours. But this will be a good reminder. This is something that will be very helpful. So last week we talked about the primary cause of why it is that we are embarking on this path. And it was, the primary cause was to realize our true nature, our Buddha nature, what we call the Buddha nature, our spirituality and so on. And we talked about the 5 families of the Buddha. So we are somewhere on that pathway, somewhere I would say we may be the dubious, or we may be the hearer, or maybe even the Pratyeka Buddha, the solitary realizer, or maybe even the Mahayana, on the Mahayana family, But we're somewhere on that path, trying to learn more, trying to practice more, trying to understand more, trying to make our life, our physical body, our intellectual body, and now our spiritual body as being all together. So we have these 3 bodies. So we're becoming aware of that, and we're strengthening those 3 bodies because they work with each other. They help each other. So tonight we're going to talk about the 2nd chapter in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation, which is called the working basis, which is this precious human life. So this is the basis. This is what we have to work with. This is our tool, for us to be able to understand our true nature. The reason why we have this life is so that as a human being, we can realize all the things that are all around us, all this phenomenal nature, and our precious and our true nature, and recognize that we have been the architect of all this. We manifested this. We created this. We gave ourselves this gift. Or you may think sometimes you may give yourself this curse. Sometimes when life is very difficult, you say, oh my God, why am I in this life? What did I do to deserve this? But then there's other times when you say, oh, life is so beautiful. I'm so glad I have this life. And now we're on the spiritual journey, and to be able to recognize that we are here with so many brothers and sisters, and being able to understand what this life is, and to be able to exalt this life and be able to lead this life as a holy enlightened being. So this is our working basis. This is what we work from. So we're going to start by recognizing that there are 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So the Dharma is the teaching of the Buddha. This is what we are practicing, the teaching of the Buddha. So let me see, I'm just going to make this fit a little bit better. Okay. So can everybody see that on your screen? The four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, also called the preliminary foundation awakenings. Adrian, you were saying you could see it?
I can see it.
Okay, very good. Okay, so can you see the cursor as I move the cursor around?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so what we are practicing here in the center, this is the Dharma wheel. This is called the Dharma wheel. It's an 8-spoke wheel, and this represents the Eightfold Path. If you remember in our very first talk on Buddhism 101, we talked about the Four Noble Truths. And the fourth of the Noble Truths was the Eightfold Path. And this Dharma wheel here represents that Eightfold Path. So this is the guide. This is the marker. This is the thing that we follow. This is the teaching of the Buddha. And here, surrounding the Eightfold Path are these jewels. And these jewels are wisdom jewels that we accumulate while we are on this path, while we are learning all about this. So this is showing these stacks of wisdom jewels that we accumulate over time. Then here on the two edges here, this stack of, these are books. And on this side here are books. So these represent the teachings that have been, that have been put down in writing so that we can refer back to them as often as we need to, and to create our own books, you know, to write our own practice, to write our own studies and so on, to help us to accumulate these wisdom jewels that are articulated for us by the Eightfold Path. So the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, what is it that made us want to do this? What in our life, what in our being wanted us to do this, that we want to do this? So this is what we're going to explore. And this is the essence of the working basis, the precious human life. So here we see the first of these four thoughts is called the precious human life. So here it says, the freedoms and advantages so extremely difficult to obtain accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? So what this means is that we have these freedoms and advantages that we may not recognize to have this precious human life. On this planet, there's about 7.5 billion people on this planet. But out of those 7.5 billion, how many of them do you think have a precious human life, have a sense of spirituality, are working towards their spirituality, or are cultivating their spirituality? Well, I don't know exactly how many there are, but I would say that it's very, very few compared to the 7.5 billion total number of people that are on this planet today. So whether it's 1 million of them, maybe it's 500,000, who knows? Maybe it's 5 million, I don't know. You know, there's many people who are religious, many people who are following some teachings and so on like that. But how dedicated are they to their spiritual practice? So we look at this in terms of the freedoms and advantages that a precious human life has. So we begin to evaluate who we are, why it is that we are here, why did we choose to do this? And this is so difficult to obtain, to accomplish this high purpose of human life. What is the purpose of human life? Last week I said it's to realize your true nature, your Buddha nature or your Christ nature or whatever you want to call it. So if one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? So the one thing we can be sure of is we've got this life now. We don't know anything about our prior life. We don't know anything about any future life. All we have is this life now. So we need to seize every opportunity that we have to be able to get the most out of this life. So these freedoms and advantages, so it says the freedoms and advantages start with these 8 leisures, or these freedoms, these 8 freedoms. So what this means is to be free from the 8 unfavorable conditions. So just think about those 7.5 billion people that are alive on this planet, and their cultures, the way they live, where they live, the nationalities they live in, what circumstances there are. And then think about all the people of the past. Think about all the different cultures, all the different civilizations that people have gone through, and all the wars that they've gone through, the famines they've gone through, the periods of pestilence that they've gone through, epidemics, pandemics like we're experiencing now, all these different things that people have gone through. But also there's been these great periods of discovery that these people have gone through, and so on. So we are free from these 8 unfavorable conditions. So what these are is, number 1, rebirth in the hell realms, where we are an improper vessel, where there's no opportunity to practice the Dharma. So we're going to talk about these 6 realms a little later on in a couple of weeks. We'll be talking about that. But one of these realms is called the hell realms. And these are people that are suffering terribly because of the terrible things that they've done in this life or in past lives. And for them, their life is always precarious. Their life is always in danger of ending immediately. They're going to be killed because they've killed others. There's going to be a bomb that's going to drop on them. There's going to be a IED that's going to go off. There's going to be a drive-by shooting. There's going to be drugs that are going to come into play. So many different things that people are going through that I would say that those who are with us tonight on the Zoom don't have this problem. We're not in these hell realms. But there is a possibility that we may have thought ourselves in a hell realm at one time or another during our lives. Maybe we were in some situation that we thought we were in a hell. Maybe we've been watching television, or we read a book or a magazine, or we saw a film, and we saw people who were living in these terrible conditions of famine, or in a war zone, or during a pandemic, and they didn't know whether they were going to be living for the next 24 hours or not. So for us, I think most of us can say that we don't have that problem. We are free from that rebirth in a hell realm. We are in a good, stable life. The next one is to be reborn in a hungry ghost realm. And this is an improper vessel. And here there's no opportunity to practice the Dharma. These people that are in a hungry ghost realm, what this represents are beings who have been very, very, very miserly, very, very greedy. And they're characterized by these beings as being very big and fat, very rotund. And they have very short feet, very short legs rather, very short arms, and they have very long necks and very small mouths. And their mode of transportation is very limited because they have these short legs, and they're being able to hold things and get things for themselves is very poor because they have short arms, and they have these long necks with little mouths. They can never satisfy their hunger. They have these big rotund bodies, but they're always hungry, and they never can drink enough. They never can eat enough to satisfy their hunger. So they are miserable. They have these miserable lives because of this, of their greediness, that this life that they have now as a hungry ghost is the result of their greediness, is a result of their miserliness. So maybe you can relate to this. Maybe there's been a time in your life where you felt that you were that kind of a hungry person who could never be satisfied, who was always miserable. Maybe you're that way now. Maybe you know somebody who's like that. Maybe somebody who's in your family, or maybe a friend, or something that you've seen in a magazine or a movie or television or something like that. Or you can just simply imagine people like that. But I would say that us that are here tonight in this meeting are free from that hungry ghost realm. So when we say it's an improper vessel, it means that their life, their body is so consumed with their miserliness, or so consumed with their being in the hell realm, that there's no time, there's no ability for them to be able to think about their spirituality, to be able to cultivate their spirituality. Their time is totally consumed by their misery and their hatefulness of the hell realm. Now, number 3 is the animal realm. So this is rebirth in the animal realm, and there's an improper vessel, and there's no opportunity to practice the Dharma there too. So I cut that last sentence off as I made this slide. So, but it means the same thing. So the animal realm is all these beings that we know are domestic pets, and all the wild animals, and all the animals that we may consume, you know, the cows and the chickens and all these, and also the insects and all the animals that are in the sea, all the fish and so on like that. So all these animals are completely unaware of how they can change their circumstances or what is happening to them. They are sentient beings. They have a consciousness, but it's nowhere near what the human consciousness is. But they are aware of stimuli, and they do have emotions. They do want to be have this satisfaction of being able to get what they need, their food and their rest and so on like that. But they have no way of controlling that, and they are just steeped in their ignorance. They don't know what's going on. They don't recognize themselves, and they don't recognize other beings around them for what they are. They might recognize their progeny, you know, those children that they have, so to speak, you know, whether they're litters or animals, dogs and cats and so on like that. We see that mothers take care of their offspring very well, and birds do the same thing, but insects and other animals don't do that so well. But there is a community spirit where you see them working together. You can examine that, but it's nowhere near the level of being a human being. They're doing these things rather blindly. So we're free from being an animal in that regard. However, we may behave like an animal. Sometimes we do things very blindly, and all that we're thinking about is our subsistence levels. You know, what can I eat? What can I consume? What sexual partner can I have? All the time looking for some kind of self-gratification that's very, very immediate, very, very limited, and so on. So we may go through periods like that in our lifetime. I remember, you know, it's like having a ring through your nose, and you know, in my life when I was a teenager, you know, many times I felt like that. You know, my God, you know, how stupid I was, and the things that I did, and the things that motivated me, and so on. So I'm glad that I moved on from that. But at that time, you know, it was all that I knew. It was what I was doing, and so on. So it was a very hedonistic, animalistic kind of an existence. Although I was doing some intelligent things, you know, my base things were still these very animalistic things. So maybe you can relate to that. So then the next is rebirth among barbarians, where there's difficulty in meeting spiritual beings. So if we can relate to, you know, the barbarians that we know in history, you know, those who came down from, other nations and came and would conquer, a whole nation or villages, and they would do terrible things. They would rape and pillage, and they would cut people with their knives, their swords, and so on, with absolutely no regard for any kind of reciprocity or anything like that. It was their way of life, these barbarians. And even in our lifetime, it wasn't long ago that in the Middle East, people were behaving like barbarians and were doing terrible things to innocent people, and going and doing these things, going in the villages and so on. It was terrible. We were watching it on the news, and we were just outraged about this. How could this be like this? But here in the 21st century, we can see that there are barbarians like that. But I could say, we're free from that. We may be able to understand, or we see other people doing it, but we ourselves are free from that. The number 5 is rebirth as a long life God, where there's no mental activity, no opportunity to practice the Dharma. So a long life God, no mental activity. There are these beings who live life as a God, not a supreme being God, not the God that we might consider to be the supreme being, but these are people who have great luxury, who have great pleasure, and are like on these great pedestals, how do you say, the ivory castles. Maybe they're very wealthy people. Maybe they are professors that are in universities and colleges. Maybe they're religious leaders. But those who have put themselves above the suffering of other beings, and they're not really paying attention to the suffering of beings. They're not doing anything to really help them, although they might represent great wisdom and great ability to be able to help people, but they're holding this back. They're keeping it for themselves. They just live in this luxury. So we may say that that we've recognized this with ourselves. Maybe we've gone through periods like this. We may recognize others who are like this today, or we've known people like that, but we ourselves maybe are not like that. We're feeling a little bit more ordinary, and we are human beings that are in a middle way, who are trying to understand all the things around us and so on. So we're not living this life as a long life God. The number 6 is rebirth in a land that holds wrong views. So wrong views would include karma, cause and effect, that there is this natural law of reciprocity, and it's an invisible law. And many people will deny that law, say, oh, I can do anything I want to do, and I can rationalize it because I have the ability to manipulate people and their ideas, and say, well, this is for the good of the community. This is for the good of the nation. This is for the good of the family, or something like that. And not paying attention to the harm and the suffering that they're causing other beings. So they're causing all this and not feeling responsible for it. But that's a wrong view. We have to look, we have to analyze and see that all the good things that we have been the result of good deeds that we have done. And all it takes is one bad deed, one hateful deed, one terrible thing for all that to change. And it's like our life is just pulled out from underneath of us, and now we wind up in some kind of prison, or we wind up, ostracized by the rest of society because of the things that we did that we thought we could get away with, that we didn't appreciate, and we didn't practice the laws of karma. Karma, cause and effect. In Western civilization, we talk about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you do good deeds will come to you. If you do bad deeds will come to you. Bad results will come to you. So not holding on to this, not recognizing this, is not having the correct worldview. So it's wrong worldviews thinking that this is not real. Number 7 is rebirth in the land that is absent from a Buddha or a teacher. A Buddha, the awakened one, is teaching us the Dharma, teaching us this pathway to enlightenment. But there's been many other great teachers who have a pathway of enlightenment, who have a pathway to be able to raise the consciousness of the followers and so on. And we're fortunate that we're not born in a land that does not have such a teacher. That today in 21st century world, many of these teachings, can be found in many different places. But there are some places where these teachings are completely suppressed, where the books are burned, where the libraries are closed. The governments are controlling everything that people have access to. And they're limiting their spirituality. They're limiting their ability to be able to progress themselves through industry and so on, because of maybe their caste or something like that, or the way in which they're born, the families that they're born in, the way their civilization is structured, that other people are controlling that. So we're fortunate that we're born in a free land where we have access to all this knowledge in all different kinds of forms. So we don't have that issue of being born in a land that is absent of a Buddha or absent of a great teacher. And then finally, number 8, that we're not reborn or have rebirth as a stupid person who cannot understand the differences between virtue and non-virtue. So I don't mean to, it's not meant to sound very, very, very offensive, but there are beings who just don't know the difference between right and wrong. They have mental issues that can't be denied, and they have to be, controlled. They have to be, held by their families very tightly. They have to go to special schools. Maybe they're institutionalized, but there are some people who cannot take the responsibility of freedom and will do terrible things to themselves and maybe terrible things to other people. They don't understand the difference between virtue and non-virtue. So for lack of a better word right now, we have to say that these people are stupid because they have a very low capacity to be able to recognize the responsibilities that they have in a society and so on. So we could say that we tonight in this group are free from all these things. So we have these 8 leisures. So we're not bound up by these negativities. So then the next thing are the advantages. We said that in this precious human life, we have the freedoms and advantages, so extremely difficult to obtain. So the advantages are these 10 endowments. And these are like gifts, believe it or not, that we have given ourselves. These are the conditions in which we chose this life to be born. We'll talk about the mechanics of this later on in another session. But there is a notion here that we are responsible for this life that we have, the conditions that we have in this life. Not every little individual thing, but many, many things, many situations, and so on. We chose to be in these situations. And we have the karmic results of the deeds that we've done that unfold themselves within these conditions. So we say that there are 5 external of these 10 endowments or advantages of being a human being. So here it says 1, born where a Buddha has arrived in this world, where a great teacher has come, where the Buddha has taught the Dharma, where the Dharma continues to be taught, where there is a Sangha to maintain the teachings, and where there is love and kind support to continue Dharma practice. So here we're focused on the Buddha, we're focused on the Dharma, That's not to say that this is exclusive. However, we are Buddhists, and we are teaching the Buddhist way. We are teaching the Dharma and so on. Um, so we're very thankful for that. We're very grateful for that. And we recognize that we had something to do in being able to have these external advantages, these endowments in our lives, these conditions to be like this. So the Buddha is the mind of the Buddha, the Dharma is the speech of the Buddha, and the Sangha is the body of the Buddha. We talked about that before, the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. So the Sangha is this community, that we can say, which is Drikung Dharma Surya Center that, is in Fairfax. And there's many other centers like that, that there's this temple that is made up of these people who are all of like mind, who are working to be able to sustain the teachings of the Buddha, of the Dharma. So these external things there are these advantages that we have. Then now the 5 internal advantages that we have are that, number one, we're born as a human being. That we're born in an area that has the Dharma teachings. We're born with the full faculties of the senses, where we have not committed the 5 heinous crimes, the evil deeds, killing a father, killing a mother, killing an arhat, injury to a Buddha, or a schism in the Sangha, and having devotion to the Dharma and Dharma friends. So these are internal. This is personal. This is within ourselves, that we were born a human being, that we weren't born an animal or an insect, that we weren't born in one of the lower realms, in the hell realms and so on. We're born as a human being. We're born in an area that has the Dharma teachings, that we're not born in some place where those teachings have been suppressed and we don't have access to those, that we have the full faculties of the senses. So we can see, we can hear, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste, and so on. And even if we any one of those senses are diminished, that we have the support to be able to compensate for those and not have it be a huge limiting factor in the conditions of our lives and so on. We can still have healthy and full lives. So we say that we can still have the benefits of our 5 senses. And we have our intelligence, not having committed the 5 heinous crimes. So we say that these are terrible things that we wind up in the hell realms, not having killed our father, killed our mother, killed an arhat. An arhat is a great practitioner, whether it's a Buddhist practitioner or another tradition, another religious tradition. To rob them of their life, to be able to do something like that, is a terrible, terrible crime. Causing injury to a Buddha means to the temples, to the buildings, to the facilities, to burning, the books that weren't meant to be burned, or defacing and doing terrible things, things to statues and so on, or to those enlightened beings, to doing terrible things to those who are living Buddhas. And schism in the Sangha. So the Sangha is the organization, and it's a terrible thing to go in and try and divide that Sangha. To be a member of the Sangha, and let's say, for instance, that there's 20 people in the Sangha, and you have some argument with the leaders of what is that Sangha. So you want to start your own Sangha. So you start dividing, you start calling out people that you can in those 20 people to come and join you or not to support those people or something like that. Causing a schism in the Sangha is a very terrible thing. Divisiveness is very, very bad. And then the last one is having devotion to the Dharma and Dharma friends. So this is something within ourselves that we love people, we have devotion, we want to see people grow, we want to see them be happy, we want to allow them to be able to manifest their love and their compassion and their love in many different ways. So we have devotion to be able to sustain that. So these are the 10 advantages. So we said that there's the freedoms and advantages so extremely difficult to obtain, accomplish the purpose of this human life. So in the 7.5 billion people on this planet, how many of them do you think have these 8 leisures and these 10 endowments? I would say it's a very, very small number. So the fact that we are among those who realize this puts us in a precious human life category, that we have this ability. Now it's up to us to seize the opportunities that we've given ourselves and do something with this. So we say, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When one obtains a body which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. So here it's taking full advantage of our 8 leisures and our 10 endowments. And now we would contemplate this. So this is something that we recite every day. You know, part of being on a Buddhist path, on a Dharma path, is establishing a daily connection with your spirituality. Now, I know at this point, we're beginners, we're just learning to do things like this, but ultimately, this is part of the goal, is to be able to stabilize our lives in this embodiment of this nature, this true nature. And it doesn't mean just 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week or 3 hours a week or one day. It means every day. It means all the time that we integrate this, we assimilate this into everything that we do with our families, our friends, our work, everything that we do in organizations and so on. So that's a very fundamental thing, that we become not just a physical person, not just an intellectual person, but also a spiritual person. And this we become a complete human being by doing this, not just a physical and intellectual, where most people spend all their lives just thinking about physical and intellectual. Now spiritual, and making that spiritual connection, and we become a complete human being. And it's like that 3-legged stool that will not tip over. A 2-legged stool doesn't work very well, but a 3-legged stool will stand by itself. You can sit on it, you can stand on it, and it will support you. And that's our complete human body, our complete human life. So we want to use it for our ultimate liberation, for our joyous result. So our liberation from suffering. Nobody wants to suffer. Everybody wants to be happy. All the 7.5 billion people on the planet, every one of them want to be happy. All the animals want to be happy. All the insects want to be happy. Nobody wants to suffer. So what we're trying to do is to allow that to manifest for ourselves, and however we can help other beings to do that, to have this joyous result. So we would contemplate this. Are there any questions or comments? If you want to turn your microphones on, and if you have any comments or questions about this first part, please speak right up. Okay. So now we go. It has been said, to be born a precious human being is more difficult than a blind turtle at the bottom of a vast ocean, greater than all the oceans combined on the earth, rising up from the depths of the water once every 100 years in order to poke its head through a single small wooden yoke floating on the ocean's surface. So what this is saying is, out of the gazillions of people, beings that have had lives on this planet, to have a precious human life is more difficult than this blind turtle rising up from the bottom of the ocean to poke its head through this yoke floating on this vast, vast, vast ocean. That's how rare it is. That's how special it is to have that. So the question becomes, how do we seize this opportunity? What are we going to do? We've created this for ourselves. We've had many, many lifetimes that have brought us to this. We may have done terrible things in past lifetimes, in our past life, this life, but we have purified ourselves to get to this point in our lives. What do we do with it now? That becomes the question. So this is the working basis. This is the precious human life. So now the second thought that turns our mind to the Dharma. Why do we turn to the Dharma? Why do we turn to the teachings of the Buddha? Well, the second reason is impermanence. How do we deal with the fact that we're all going to die? We don't know when we're going to die, but we know that everyone is going to die. Everything is going to change. Everything, all life changes. Nothing remains the same. It's the only thing that we can count on is impermanence itself. So we say this: Ka, no matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, they are lies. Ka, the 8 worldly dharmas are like a painted rainbow. Think you can put your trust in them? So here we are in life. We've got this wonderful life. You know, we've been born in a great land, or we've emigrated to this great land. We have all these possibilities for ourselves. And what do we do? What do we think about most all the time? These worldly activities, these 8 worldly dharmas. And the 8 worldly dharmas or concerns are gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disgrace. How much of our time do you think we spend thinking about these 8 things? Gain and loss. Well, how much do I have in the bank? What if I lose that I have this in the bank? Oh, I have this pleasure. I have this new love of my life. I have this new car. I have this sweetheart. I have this new home. I have something like that. But now that I've got it, now I have to take care of it. And now I have to pay for insurance. Now I have to make the payments, for this new car. Oh, my new sweetheart wants this wonderful gift for their birthday. I want to take them on a vacation. And now it's all this pleasure now is causing me all this pain. How much do we think about that? How much time do we work for these things? Praise and blame. We work in a company, or we're working in school, and we're developing, all these awards that we do, in our organizations and so on. And we do these wonderful things, and we get all this praise, and maybe we get this plaque that we can put up in the mantle of our fireplace, or maybe it's something that we can mount on the wall, or all these awards come to us, all this wonderful stuff. Maybe you're working in a company, and you're a salesperson, and you bring in a new account, a $1 million account that is going to bring this fresh money into the account, into the company, and everybody is so happy. We're going to be able to hire some new people and do some new things because we have this new account, and everybody's thinking what a wonderful person you are and so on. But then the next day or the next week, something happens and you lose a $5 million account. Or something happens and now all this praise goes away, and now you're regarded as a bum. Oh, we're not only going to lose the building that we're in, we're going to have to move to a smaller building. We're going to have to let a lot of people go. We're going to have to fire people. We're going to have to sell trucks. We're going to have to do all these things that we don't want to do. Now you're the one who's being blamed for this. So on one hand, we can be praised, and then very quickly we can be blamed for the failures that happen within our relationships, within our families, and the places that we work, our organizations, and so on like that. So how much do we think about these things? If with praise, if you're the one who's, oh my God, I'm going to get this account. I'm going to get this $1 million account. This is so wonderful. And I can't wait to tell everybody. I can't wait to tell everybody, but I'm not going to tell anybody yet because I don't want to jinx it. You know, so you hold on to it for 3 or 4 months before the deal is done. And you're holding on, but you're thinking about it all the time. And then finally you get it and you share it with everybody and you get all this praise. But then, like I said, the next week or so, you lose the $5 million account, and now you can't get it off of your mind. Now you can't sleep. Now everybody is thinking what a terrible person you are, how we lost the building, we lost the business, and so on like that. And now you can't stop thinking about it from that. So how much time do we think about that? How much energy goes? And then the last two is fame and disgrace. We can look at so many heroes that we have. Maybe they're sports heroes. Maybe they're politician heroes. Maybe they're military heroes. All different kinds of heroes that we have. They may be religious heroes. And they have great fame. They're known all around the world for being such wonderful people because of their talents that they have. It's not that they did anything, so special, but maybe they had these special talents that allowed them to do these things. Or maybe they did something that they had to work for and they got this great fame for it. But then you find out somewhere along the line that they've been doing this other stuff. They've been embezzling money, or they've been doing terrible sexual misdeeds, or they've been burying people in the backyard that you didn't know about. All these terrible things that in our lifetime we've read about or we've heard about or we've seen on television and so on. And so now here's this fame that you have, and then all of a sudden now it becomes disgrace. And how much time and effort, how much energy is spent thinking about these things and having to live out this fame and this disgrace. So these are the 8 worldly concerns, or the 8 dharmas. And the dharmas are the pathways. So this should be a lowercase d here, because the dharma in Sanskrit language means a pathway. The capital D is the Buddha's dharma, the Buddha's pathway. But I made a mistake and I printed it like that. So how much time do we spend like that? So going back here, it says, no matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, all these things are lies. All these things are fabrications. The 8 worldly dharmas are like a painted rainbow. Think you can put your trust in them? A painted rainbow. A rainbow is just illusory. And all this stuff is just here now, and we say here today and gone today. It can change so quickly, impermanence. So now the next statement here is, in the certainty of death and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain, like the shadow of the setting sun. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire and fierce diligence. So knowing that we're going to die and knowing that nothing remains long, we have to accomplish liberation. We have to free ourselves from from these attachments to these 8 worldly concerns. They're not going to save us. They're not going to help us. When we die, there's no luggage racks on hearses, So anything that we've done just dies along with us. So how do we free ourselves from these attachments, that consume us? And permanence makes departure certain, like the shadow of the setting sun. So we can see that. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire and fierce diligence. So one of the terrible things that we can do with our lives is be lazy with it and indifferent, that we don't care, that we just get very complacent. We take things for granted, and we just allow those 8 worldly concerns to just churn around in our lives, and we're not doing anything constructive about it. We're just going through the vicissitudes of all those things changing and so on. So instead, we should blaze like fire and fierce diligence to liberate ourselves from this, to be able to exalt ourselves, to be able to take ourselves and other beings to a higher level, to a higher standard of living. This life is impermanent, like clouds in the autumn sky. Birth and death migrators are like actors in a play or a dance. The life of beings is like lightning in the sky, like water falling from a steep mountain cliff. It departs quickly, quickly. So we recognize this life is fast. This life is impermanent. 60 years, 70 years, 80 years. It's like a blink of an eye. Think about, whatever age you are now, but think about 10 years ago. It's like a dream. Think about 20 years ago. It's a more distant dream. 30 years ago, it's more distant than that. So life is impermanent. It's like a dream. It's like clouds in the autumn sky. They just drift on through. Birth and death migrators are like actors in a play or a dance. So here, we talk about, sometimes you meet somebody that seems so familiar to you because they're playing a particular role in their lives that resonates with you, something that you recognize, something that you vibrate with, and you remember that. The name is different maybe, and the face is different, but the role that person plays is the same, and it seems so familiar. And we go through these cycles. Every 10, 11 years, we go through a cycle of life. And there are certain things that rise up in each circle, and we have the ability to solve those things, or they come back to us in the next circle that we go through in the next 10, 11 years. And then if we don't solve it there, then we go through the next one. That's why we have, 40-year-olds who are behaving like 8-year-olds, because they never solve those problems as a child or as a teenager or as a 20-something or as a 30-something. Now as a 40-something, now they're acting so childish. So you can see how that goes through. There's many examples like that we can talk about. So they're like actors in a play. We're all like that. That there's this ongoing story that's going on, and we're part of that story. Or it's like a dance. So the life of beings is like lightning in the sky, which means how fast does that lightning last in the sky? A second. All of a sudden, bam, there's this flash of light. And then 5, 6 seconds later, then there's this thunderclap that you hear. But that lightning only lasted for a second. So I don't know how many billions of years do they say that, that the universe has been here. We're just like the blink of an eye in the terms of that lifespan and the lifespan of this universe. So it's incredible to be able to conceive of. So our life is so small, and we make it to be so big. We think it's so permanent and so on. But the reality is it's nothing but impermanent. And we manufacture, we fabricate all these things to attach to that causes suffering.
Lance,
So, yes, was somebody going to say something?
Lance, I do have a quick question.
Sure.
So is it correct to look at impermanence kind of like in the same way you look at or meditate on emptiness in this context?
And emptiness? No, not at all. They're two different things altogether.
So impermanence and emptiness, they're two different things.
Two different concepts. There may be some intersecting relationship,
Right.
but no, it's two different concepts. So impermanence is, I mean, it's very simple, you know, that nothing lasts forever. I mean, tell me something that lasts forever. Tell me something that's permanent.
Oh.
You can think about it, and if it comes to you, you can let me know.
The Buddha field. I don't know.
What's that?
Buddha field.
The Buddha field? The Buddha field is permanent?
I don't know. I guess I've been there.
The Buddha field is emptiness.
Okay. So the way that I'm like interpreting sometimes emptiness is it's kind of like related to being impermanent, right? Because all things are impermanent, and that way it doesn't have its own existence, and therefore it's kind of like empty of its own nature. It's not there forever.
We're just fabricating concepts on top of concepts.
Okay.
You know, like I said, and at some point they may intersect.
Uh-huh.
But and that's the world of concepts. That's the world of the eight worldly concerns. You know, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. All these things. This is what we think about. You know, so here we're thinking about concepts. We're thinking about intellectualism of what this is. You know, so impermanence is made up of all these things, intellectual stuff as well as physical stuff.
Right. But emptiness is different in what way?
Emptiness is just a concept. Emptiness is just recognizing that all things are of a compounded nature. And we create
that are kind of like impermanent in themselves. So
they're non-existent. They're non-existent.
But at the same time, it's wrong to think that
we think they're permanent.
Non-existent. They're non-existent, but at the same time, it's wrong to think that they're. I guess they're existent but not existent at the same time, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm not that much of a philosopher and that much of a scholar to be able to you know talk about these kinds of things, you know, in these theoretical ways and so on. But you know, this is what we have to deal with as we're going through our practices and meditations and so on. So right now, what we're trying to do is to call attention to this so that you can solve this riddle for yourself over time. You know, this becomes part of the of your process. So here we're identifying impermanence so that you can analyze it. For some of us, it may be the reason why we're here, to understand it. So now we're saying, okay, let's look at it, and but that's what we're trying to do. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't think I can answer it to your satisfaction right now. You know, there are similarities. It is conceptual, but the conceptuality of it shows its impermanence, and if it also has elements of the emptiness as well. But to say that they're both the same thing, I don't know. It's an interesting question. Let's leave it like that. Okay. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
There's not enough time in this 2-hour meeting to be able to talk about that. Okay. So, like water falling from a steep mountain cliff, it departs quickly. So it's It's our, it's our life. It's like a water coming over a steep mountain cliff. Once that water starts flowing off the mountain cliff, the waterfall, there's no going back. You can't stop it. So that's what our life is like. It's got that motion, that forward motion, this free fall. And that's what it's like. So the nature of all phenomena is impermanence. So if you're saying here that emptiness is impermanence, the nature of all phenomena is impermanence, the nature of all phenomena is emptiness, well, here maybe, you have a point. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend anytime, like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. So death is a certainty to all who are born. We don't know when it's going to come. Death can descend anytime, like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. It can just happen right away. And it's time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. The essence of the Dharma is the awareness, is the way in which we recognize this phenomena and the way that we liberate ourselves from this phenomena, the way we liberate ourselves from the suffering of impermanence. We know we're going to die. We know it's all going to change. I don't have to suffer with that awareness. So we contemplate that. Okay. Would anybody like to take a short break? Anybody want to stand up and take a minute?
Sure, I would like some water.
All right. Please take a short break. Come right back in just a couple minutes so we can keep on going. Thank you. I'm going to stop this for a minute so I can see everybody. Okay. Any other questions or comments while we're waiting?
I have a question,
Yeah.
Lance, but I don't want to take over. Some other people have questions.
Adrian, your question.
Okay, I have a question. It's totally unrelated to what we're talking about tonight. But I always wondered, what is the significance, what is the symbolism behind the colorful socks of the Dakini?
The colorful what?
Socks. They're wearing socks, right?
The 5 Buddha families.
This right here.
Yeah, represents the 5 Buddha families.
So they have the crown of the 5 Buddha families.
Yeah.
And then the socks has the same meaning?
Well, they are the enlightened activity of the 5 Buddha families. The Dakinis are the activity of the 5 Buddha families. So they're enlightened in that way. And, they didn't cause the happiness. It's a fine point. I'm not the best person to answer this question, but they are the embodiment of the activity of the wisdom of the 5 Buddhas. So perhaps because of their legs being, their transportation, noting, their dancing and their moving, the movement of that activity is the result of the wisdom of the 5 Buddha families. So that's how I would interpret that.
Right. Because they're all just like the primordial colors, the red, green, yellow, the blue, white.
Of the 5 Buddha families, right?
Right.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's right.
Right.
It's right here.
Right.
Yes. Okay. I never thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. Then.
No, you're welcome. It's a good question. Practical question. For myself, Buddhism is very practical. I look at it in practical terms. So is this, yes.
On the
Dharma.
page where you have the word impermanence in red.
Yes.
What is ka? K-A?
It's just an exclamation point. Ka. You know, it's
Is
just an
that a Tibetan,
exclamation. You
is
know.
that a Tibetan word?
I really don't know the you know the origin of that, but I would imagine it means discovery. Ka.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Good question for Kempo sometime. Anybody have anything else? Let me see. I'm looking it up in my Tibetan dictionary, but I'm not seeing anything there. I got another one. Let me see if it comes up here. So is this slideshow helpful, you think?
I'm definitely appreciating it to look at the words as you're talking, like the conversation. It's helpful for me, so thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. To be honest, it's the first time I've done it like this, but I think it's helpful to me.
Are we still on a break?
No, I'm ready to go.
Oh,
Okay, we ready? Okay. What's this? Okay. So we're back. You can see everything, right? All right. So now the third thought that turns the mind to the Dharma is this concept of karma. What is karma? Karma is a Sanskrit word that means action. For there to be an action, there has to be a cause. Something has to happen to precipitate or to bring the action, for there to be an action. And then there is a result. So karma, when we talk about karma, it's implied that it's the cause of the karma and the result of the karma. It's the action that we take. So what we discover through analysis is that karma is a law of nature in the same way that electromagnetics is a law of nature, gravity is a law of nature, the weak force is a law of nature, the strong force is a law of nature, these basic laws of nature. And karma, you know, good things happen when we do good things. Bad things happen when we do bad things. If bad things are happening, we can transform those bad things into good things by doing good things and by a good action, and then we'll have a good result. Likewise, if we have a good cause for something and we step on it with a bad, non-virtuous action, then the result of that will be a negative, non-virtuous result. So through observation, we can see this, much in the same way that through observation, if I drop something off the top of my bureau and it's going to fall to the ground, we can prove that gravity is working. If I go and stick my fingers in the wall socket, the electric wall socket, I can't see the electricity, but when I stick my finger in there, I'm going to feel the electricity. So gravity is invisible, electricity is invisible, and so is karma invisible. So we can challenge that, and we should challenge that. We should look at that. We should examine this. All this is here for us to examine. These are the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So once you turn the mind to the Dharma, it doesn't mean that these thoughts go away. It means that you're constantly evaluating them, because new circumstances, new conditions are always arising in our lives, and we have to reevaluate things. We have to go and look at things again and reprove things over and over again. So even if one were a king, at the time of death, one's possessions, enjoyments, friends, and retinue will not follow. But wherever that sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. So this is going back to the notion that hearses don't have luggage racks on them. Even if you're a king, that when you die, no matter what you have, you're not taking any of it with you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't go with you. Your body doesn't go with you. Your brain doesn't go with you. Anything that you have stored in your brain, that little hard drive, that mushy hard drive of gray matter, all those thoughts, all those ideas, all those concepts are gone. You don't take it with you. What you take with you, though, is the karma. And we're going to examine that. So one's possessions, friends, retinue will not follow. But wherever that sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. The fruit of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. So the karma is like the planting a seed. The cause is the seed. And then what we do with the seed and how we nurture the seed is going to determine whether it's going to be what kind of a fruit it's going to be. Is it going to be a healthy fruit, or is it going to be an unhealthy fruit? The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. So inexorable means that which cannot be moved by influence or persuasion. We can't change the karma through persuasion. It is what we have created it to be. That karmic causation is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. This is the way the dharmas are all the pathways. So we have all these choices, all these things that we do in our lives. So, and how we choose those very often is by way of our karmic winds that we have at our back, so to speak. You know, those things that are embedded in us, you know, for lack of a better word. I'm just giving you a visualization, you know, not that it is exactly that way, but it's like, you know, there are these imprints that are with us that when conditions are ripe, those seeds will sprout and they'll begin to grow. So henceforth, practice the Dharma by distinguishing what should be practiced and what should be given up. So in our lifetimes, we have propensities to do things. We may have propensities to be a musician. You know, we have the karma to be a musician. You know, we may have the karma to be a great mathematician. We may have the karma to be a carpenter. We may have the karma to be so many different things. We may have the karma to be someone who is very lazy and very inactive and who doesn't do very much. We may be a thief. We may have the karma to be a thief or a killer or something. So there's many, many different ways in which this karma is within ourselves. And we have combinations of these things. You know, we may be a great mathematician who likes to go around stealing from people, you know, because they have this propensity to want to steal, but they're a great mathematician. So we have these different things, and when these different conditions arise, then the fruit begins to blossom, you know, the fruit begins to grow and begins to blossom and so on. So this is the way karma works, and we need to be able to examine that. The karma, some people would liken this to be able to say, well, where is the karma stored? You know, if I do something when I'm, let's say in this lifetime, and let's say I did something last year, and let's say that last year I did something really, really good. Let's say I really helped somebody that was really in need of help, and maybe I helped them with some time, maybe I helped them with some money, maybe I helped them with some skill that I might have had to help them through this period of suffering and so on. And then now a year later, some conditions come up for myself that may be similar to what happened to this person that I helped a year ago. But somehow or another, I'm able to work my way through those conditions very smoothly, very easily. And it might be because of the karma that I created by helping that person a year ago now comes to me, back to me, and being able to help me through a similar situation now at this time. So it could be something negative. You know, if I did something bad and I was hurtful to people, and now I've always got the police looking for me. I got that person's big brother looking for me who wants to beat me up. And I'm always looking over my shoulder, and I keep hiding in places, and I keep meeting people who are non-virtuous, and I start getting myself in all these jackpots of terrible circumstances because of the misdeeds that I did a year ago. If that can happen a year ago, then can it happen in what we might say a prior lifetime? Can we do something in a prior lifetime and those karmic seeds kind of sit there in some kind of dormancy or something, but then when the conditions are right, all of a sudden the seed begins to grow and that karma comes up. You know, we could say, we've got a very nice life this lifetime. We've been going really, really good. And then all of a sudden, when we're 60, 70 years old, all of a sudden something happens that totally out of the blue, that we totally was totally different than anything that we expected. And now we have this terrible suffering that we had no idea was going to happen. So this can happen individually to people. You know, maybe it's a car accident, maybe it's a disease, maybe it's, you know, a bad fall, you know, so many different things can happen, you know. But look at our circumstance now. Look at what's happening in the world now with this coronavirus, and think about this as karma for all these people, for the whole world to be suffering in this way. We're suffering in so many different ways because of this. And there's like this collective karma that is happening. You know, what did we do in the past to cause something like this as a civilization, as nations and so on? What did we do to cause this? I don't have an answer for that, you know, but it's worthy of investigation, of looking at, and worthy of liberating from any further suffering from it. If we want to overcome a disease like coronavirus, we need to investigate all the causes of it. We need to investigate all the permutations of the way it manifests. And through looking at all these things, maybe we can develop the vaccine or the therapies that will take away the suffering for that. But if we just ignore that, if we don't examine that, well, you know what's going to happen. It's just going to take over the whole world, and it's just a matter of time before everybody just suffers from coronavirus in whatever degree it can manifest. So we know that there has to be proactive involvement to be able to overcome that. So the same thing is true with emotional karma, emotional things that happen, things that are in our lives. We need to be able to examine our lives as the result of past good deeds and negative deeds, and the combinations of things that come out of that. So how do we do that? You know, do you go to the university and take a class on karma? I don't think so. You know, do you go to your church or your synagogue or to your temple and you talk with the leaders there and you talk about something like this, and they say, oh yes, you know, this is something that we have to be responsible for. It's a spiritual question. And the more that we find out about spirituality, we find that there is a psychophysical connection. There's an intellectual connection. There's a physical connection. We're seeing that these three things exist simultaneously. And now, you know, modern science is getting to the point that says, you know what, physics as we know it, as a science, is not answering all the questions. Maybe we need a new science. Maybe there needs to be something else that hasn't been discovered yet. And maybe spirituality has to be part of that equation. So you can examine that. You can look at that. There's lots of things that are talking about these things these days, you know, and we can, you know, this is food for thought. So we contemplate this. Many people have said to the Buddha, have said to teachers, and they would say, oh, says, what were my past lives? Oh, Buddha, you're such a wise guy. What was my past life? Why am I here now? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? And he says, well, he says, if you want to know your past lives, look at where you are now. If you're a person who is in a really good circumstance, has everything that you need, maybe not everything that you want, but everything that you need, is because you had good past lives. If on the other hand, if you're a miserable person who never has anything of what you need, you're always causing suffering for yourself and for others and everything, well, maybe in your past lives, you were causing great suffering for other people and for yourself. And now in this life, it's just carried over. He says, but to you who asked this question, the question you should be asking is, what is my next life going to be? And the answer to that is, what you are doing now is going to be the formation of what your next life is. So what you do now is the cause for the karma in your next life. So that puts a whole different slant on things. You know, we can say, okay, you know, we've already identified that we have this precious human life, have all these abilities and so on to be able to do this. And it's because of the good karma that we had in the past. We still may have some negativities that we have to deal with, that we got to clean up, that we got to purify. But now we start thinking about, well, okay, I'm a lot closer to my death than I am to my birth. I've gotten to that part of my age. I know it's inevitable. I know it's coming. You know, what I'm doing now is going to influence what happens in my next life. Now, if I haven't gone to work yet on that, I need to go to work on that. So this is what the Buddha was saying. So he says, what you now is what you have been, And what you will be is what you do now. So we need to contemplate that. So this is the third thought that turns the mind to the Dharma. So now the fourth thought is the suffering of samsara. Why do we have this suffering? What is this suffering? And why do we turn to the Dharma? Why do we turn to this teacher to help us to understand this suffering? If I had been able to figure that out by myself, I would have done it years ago. But I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to figure that out. But I discovered the Dharma and said, oh, here is a system by which I can examine my life. I can examine life in general and see what suffering is and see what happiness is, see what makes suffering and see what makes happiness. And then maybe I can re-engineer my life a little bit, clean it up a little bit. And now I can have a better life for myself and all those who are around me. So we need to examine the suffering of samsara. So samsara is this collective word, this Sanskrit word that we use for this ocean of suffering. We talk about this ocean of suffering that we are all in. So it says here, consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. In the 3 lower realms, and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So consider the suffering of beings, the 6 realms of samsara. So we talked about the 3 lower realms, was the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. Those are the 3 lower realms. The 3 higher realms are the human realm, the jealous God realm, and the God realm, the Deva God realm. So we're going to study this more in depth in a few weeks. But these are the 6 realms of human existence that we create for ourselves as a result of our karma. This is what we call the psychophysical drama of being a human being. We can go through periods where we think we are in hell. We can go through periods where we think that we are a jealous God. We can go through periods where we're behaving like a human being or an animal or a God. So, and we can do this all at the same time. All this is happening simultaneously. But as we change, these things can change, but we're in control of it, but we haven't learned to recognize these things and to take responsibility for these things. So the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara, doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. So when we say, oh my goodness, you know, what is happening? I'm out of control. I don't know what's going on. And you get that sinking feeling in your heart, especially the closer you get to your death and you say, well, what's that going to be like? You know, the fear that we have for what's going to happen when we die. You know, am I going to be able to deal with meeting God or whatever it is that I'm going to do, being liberated, not knowing the other side and so on. So as we think about this suffering of the 6 realms of samsara, doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. In the 3 lower realms and even in the 3 higher ones, there's not an instant of absolute happiness because all of these are part of our psychophysical drama. We've created all this. And deep down, we know this. And we'll be faced with this the closer and closer and closer we get to reality. This reality we've fabricated for ourselves. This is all this story that we've created. We made an architecture of our life. We contrive this. But when we give all this up, you know, we don't take it with us when we die, right? Then what is reality? Without all this, what is that reality? That's when you get that sinking feeling. So for all of us, regardless of where we are, whatever realm we think that we are in, that we are representative of, the hell realm or the God realm, that there's not a moment of absolute assurity. We don't know, of absolute happiness. We don't know. So it says, I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence, being in this phenomenal nature, and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. The only thing I can really, I can understand, the one thing I can recognize is if I do good deeds, good things happen to me. I can trace that. I can look at that. I can examine that. And it doesn't matter what it was that happened yesterday or last week or a month ago or last life that got me here, as much as what I'm doing right now. That's what matters most, what I am in right now. If I had bad things happen to me and I've been fortunate enough to be able to rectify them and purify them, and now I have good things, well, I'm grateful for that and I will continue that. But if I've had negative things and I've been able to fix things and so on, I'm grateful for that. If there are good things that I have ruined, well, I may not be grateful for that, but I have to go on the excellent path of peace to enlightenment to be able to rectify that. So what is it that leads me to the path of peace? What is the path of peace? So the path of peace is the Dharma, is the Buddha's path. Not to say that there aren't other paths, but the Buddha's path, the Dharma path, is well articulated, has great support, and is there for many, many, many beings. I see Adrian has a question.
Lance, can you remind us what are all types of karma? I know there's positive, negative, neutral karma.
I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so in the higher realms, so the three higher realms of samsara are the Deva realm or the God realm, the Asura realm or the jealous God realm or the realm of Titans, the human realm. The three lower realms of samsara are the animal realm, the preta hungry ghost realm, and the hot and cold hell realms. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that. We're going to spend more time doing that in a few weeks, like I said. But you can get a sense of the three lower realms and the three upper realms. So now, what is this human suffering? So this human suffering is made up of let's put it this way. Sentient beings, we talked about sentient beings as those that have a consciousness, they have a lifetime, they have a birth, they have a death, they respond to stimuli, and there's a certain consciousness about them, about their environment. They may go away from certain things and they may go towards certain things. So this can define animals, human beings, insects, paramecia, many, many, many invisible things that we can't see, things that are huge that we don't recognize. There may be those too. We don't recognize them. So all these things, by virtue of their being sentient beings, have the suffering of birth, have the suffering of sickness, have the suffering of old age, and have the suffering of death. So in human beings, we're born suffering. We're born, we're completely helpless. We need to be cleaned up. We need to be fed. We need to be make sure that we're kept warm and so on and comfortable. And for the next year, 2 years, we're for the next year anyway, we're completely helpless. We need to have that care from our parents, our caregivers, whatever. If we didn't have that, we would surely die. Then we get sick. Throughout our whole life, we have all these sicknesses. colds, flus, coronavirus, all these things can happen. Injury, all these things can happen, and we're suffering with all of those. And then old age, as we get old, now, our bodies get weaker, our hair gets thinner, our eyes get poor, our mental acuity begins to suffer. We have to walk with a cane. All these things begin to happen. Old age starts happening, and our body starts wearing out. So we suffer from that. And then death comes, which we seemingly may not have any control over. And then we don't know what's going to happen on the other side of death. And so we have a great fear of that. We have a great suffering of death. It may come as a means of being shot to death. It may be the pain of being an illness, a painful illness. It may be an accident. It could be so many different ways in which we die. So there's suffering of death. So all sentient beings have that kind of suffering. However, human beings have 4 more sufferings that identify that are unique to human beings. So I didn't make a slide for this, but the first one is that you are suffering because you are with beings that you don't want to be with. You're in circumstances that you are out of control of and you find very unpleasant, and you don't want to be in those circumstances. And you're suffering greatly from that. So whether it's something as silly as being at a cocktail party where you were invited by somebody and then you don't know anybody there, and it's the most boring, worst cocktail party you've ever been to, and you can't wait to leave. Maybe it's something like that. Or maybe it's something that you spent a whole lot of money on to go on vacation someplace, and you find out that the place that you're going to doesn't have the amenities that you want, and doesn't have good food, and you don't like the people there, and now you're spending the next 5 days in this situation. Or maybe it's something at work and things happen at work. So you can imagine all these different things that can happen that you can be in part of, that you can be in, that you feel like you're just totally miserable, that you wish you weren't there, but you can't leave. There's circumstances that keep you there and so on. So that's a human suffering. But then there's another human suffering where you are without your loved ones, that you're missing your loved ones and they're missing you, and you want to be with your loved ones. And there's nothing that you can do to bring them close by, and you're missing your loved ones. So that's another suffering, to be without your loved ones. So maybe it's, well, there's so many different things. You can imagine what they are. Another thing is that you're not getting what you want. You want a new car. You want a big house. You want a new lover. You want a new job. You want something, and you're very unhappy, and you're wanting this all the time, and you're suffering because you don't have it. But then you get it, and now you got to take care of it. Now you got to pay the insurance. Now you got to keep it washed. Now you got to protect it by somebody not rolling a supermarket cart into the side of your car. Now you have to keep your lover happy all the time. Now you have to take care of your house. So you have to keep working on it and so on, and doing all these things that you didn't expect that you would have to do. So you get what you want, but now you have to protect it. You have to take care of it. So these 4 sufferings are human sufferings that we may all fall prey to. I'm sure everybody can relate to each one of those things at some point in their lives and so on. So these are called the suffering of suffering. And these are everyday kind of mundane sufferings that we go through that are very, they're practical. They happen all the time. Then there's the suffering of change. So the suffering of change is where you now have a situation that you really like, and you're there for some period of time, but invariably something happens and things change and you're uncomfortable with the change. You're suffering with the change. Maybe it's in your job. You got a really nice office, everything is really cool, and everybody respects you. You got lots of praise and all that. And then this new guy comes in and the boss comes to you and says, oh, by the way, this new guy is going to share your office with you. And that change is just driving you crazy. Or that the company's leaving, they're going to Chicago, and you have the choice to go with them or stay, and now you have the suffering of that change. So all these sufferings of change, the way things change in our lives. So you can see many, many, many permutations of how that can happen. And we just don't like that suffering. We don't like change very much. Then the next one is the all-pervading suffering of individuality. Now this one is a very subtle suffering of individuality. And what this means is that we see our place in all this stuff and we get this helpless feeling that we can't do the things and relieve the suffering of those beings that we would like to be able to help. This all-pervading suffering of individuality is a suffering of the bodhisattvas, of being a holy enlightened being. When you can rise up and you can see all the causes of all the sufferings, of all the beings. You've seen your suffering, but you've been able to do something about your suffering. You've been able to overcome your suffering. But now here's all these beings, and you're feeling helpless and being able to help them. And this suffering of individuality, of not being able to be part of them. And so we have a choice. Do we come back in? Do we re-engage with these beings? Do we re-engage with this suffering to be able to help them through their suffering? Because as you've become this rare, subtle person, you've lost the connection points with those beings. So now you're suffering. Do I come back into this, or do I remain as this aloof, realized person who sees the suffering but has no way to be able to come to the rescue or to help these beings? So that's called the all-pervading suffering of individuality, being able to see that suffering, the causes of all being. So, Adrian, was that what you were talking about? Was there something else more specific?
No, that was good. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. So again, this needs to be contemplated upon. All these things need to be contemplated upon. And there are practices to help us to contemplate these things, to be able to get an objective point of view on these things, to be able to look at them from different perspectives and so on. And so all the things that we're learning in 101 all contribute to being able to get that objectivity, to be able to understand the causes, to be able to understand the antidotes, to be able to understand the wisdoms that precipitate out of that, and so on. And then we become doctors for ourselves and doctors for others. We know what medicine we need to take. We recognize the illnesses that we have, and we recognize the causes of the illnesses. And the illnesses are our emotions, our negativities, our arrogance, our hurtfulness, all these different things. So we begin to learn all these things. So this practice, these 4 thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma, is something that we recite every day. Whether you're a beginner, or whether you're an advanced practitioner, or whether you're a Lama who has spent 25 years in retreat, or you're the Dalai Lama, we do these practices every day. We do these recitations every day. And we think about this. And some days we really get stuck on something. Some days we have to stop and we have to really process the meaning of this with this new information that has come in, these new conditions that have arisen. How did we get in this situation and what are we going to do with it? And worldwide with the coronavirus, we're probably all thinking about that. So all these things. So this is the first of the studies that we do in stages of meditation. This is the first practice that we do, is to be able to do this. So if you feel strong enough that you want to do this, that's fine. If you feel like, this is something that you're going to wait on and we're going to see more stuff and see how it all fits together later on, that's okay too. We're going to keep working at it. But this is something for you to put into your file cabinet and bring out from time to time, keep nearby. So if you can print this, if you need this printed, let me know and I will send you a printed copy of this. But if you can print this and keep this and read this, even if in 5 minutes, during the start of the day or at the end of the day, you take it out and you read this, is enough contemplation and will bring on more contemplation.
Lance, can you possibly make the PDF so it isn't 20 pages long?
This isn't 20 pages long, is it? Oh, I see. I could do that for you, Curtis, because you asked me to do it, but I'm not going to do it now. I'll do it later.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Never enough. Okay. All right. So now we come to the part where we identify Om, Ah, Hum. This is where we recognize our body, speech, and mind, and the body, speech, and mind of the enlightened ones, of the Buddha. So we say, Om is the body, the oneness, the bliss nature of the Buddhas, the chakra at the forehead. This is the body of the Buddha. So it's a white Om. So you see it in the English, and you see it in the Sanskrit or the Tibetan. So whichever way you visualize it is fine, but it's a white Om at the forehead that represents the body of the Buddha. And our body, and what we want to do is for our body and the body of the Buddha to come together. Now the Ah. The Ah is at the throat and represents the speech of the Buddha. It represents emptiness, the unborn nature of the Buddhas. This is the chakra at the throat, the unborn nature of the Buddhas, the primordial nature of the Buddhas. The speech of the Buddhas. So this is something that we conceive of, that we perceive with our brain. And we begin to embody and begin to enact. We begin to do this and so on. So this is the unborn nature of the Buddhas that we are trying to become the actualizers of. So this is the speech of the Buddhas. This is the Dharma teaching. So emptiness is within that, and emptiness is something we'll talk a lot about. So that's the Ah. So whether it's the Ah in English or it's the Ah in the Tibetan, you'll see that. Then the next one is the Hum. The Hum is at the heart, and the Hum means the mind of the Buddha, the mind, the awareness, the wisdom mind of the Buddha, the chakra at the heart. And this is not the mind, this is not the intellectual mind. This is the big mind. This is the spiritual mind. This is the mind of the Buddha. And this is a mind that has no words. This is non-conceptual. This is the primordial mind. So, and we open that up through the coalescence of the energy of our physical body and our intellectual body. When we are able to harness the physical body and the intellectual into one thing, all that energy comes together, and then it's like a key that opens up the mind of the Buddha, opens up our heart chakra, and opens up that heart. Now, saying that is very easy, but recognizing that, doing that is very subtle and takes a great deal of work to do that. But that's where we're going. That's what we're trying to do, to open up the mind of the Buddha. So when we say Om, Ah, Hum, this is what we're doing. The body of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. So this gives you a focal point on which to be able to contemplate this. So does anybody have any other questions? And I know it's a little bit after 9. We'll say our dedication prayers very shortly. But if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Hey, Lance,
Yes, sir.
you spoke about karma. So does karma expire? Does karma have an expiration date on it?
Nope. And you can't transfer it. No transfers, no expiration date. It's invisible, you know, and we have to be prepared. You know, that's one of the things that we're doing. We're preparing ourselves for the things that we don't know that are going to come up. You know, did 6 months ago, 10 months ago, did we know the coronavirus was going to come up? You know, those of us who have some kind of a practice, those of us that have teachers, those of us that have access to Zoom and have been tuning in to these teachings and everything, you know, for us, there's been a silver lining in this cloud. But for others, they've been totally miserable because they've been out of their job, they've been out of their work, all they do is sit around and gossip and talk about how miserable they are and everything. You know, for us, it's been a different experience. Our karma is different than some other people's karma, but we're in the same circumstances. The same conditions exist for both of us, but we deal with it in different ways.
So is that, go ahead.
What's that?
The
Go ahead,
karma.
Tom was saying something.
Sorry.
Tom?
So is that why good things sometimes happen to bad people and bad things sometimes happen to good people? Are they just reaping what they've done in their past?
Well, sure, sure, absolutely. Just because, you know, if you're a bad person doesn't mean that you're completely bad. There's all good things, you know, and it's a matter of helping people to recognize that. Likewise, you know, a good person's been doing good work, and then all of a sudden, you know, they find out that they do something bad, and they've been embezzling money, and all the good stuff they've done is thrown out the window, and they're wind up in jail.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Adrian?
Oh, what I was going to say is that I think it would be safe to say that karma, you can exhaust karma, and at that time, you are, I guess at that time, if you exhaust all your karma, you're liberated, right?
Well, another way of saying it is neutralizing it.
Right? Exhausting or neutralizing it, yeah.
Yeah. You know, the karma can exhaust you, you know, but I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring the karma onto the path.
Right.
And by doing that, we recognize the cause of the karma, and then we neutralize the karma, and then the wisdom comes out of that. The wisdom arises out of that.
Once you do that, you're not creating more karma. And if you manage to neutralize it, then I guess you're not born in samsara again. Is that right?
At the, yes, at the highest level like that, yes, yes.
Yeah.
You know, so really that's the Buddha, you know, who has gone through, has traversed all the pathway, all the bhumis of the bodhisattva, purified all the afflictive emotions, all that negative karma has been neutralized, has been overcome. All the wisdom is there, and then what's left at the very last bhumi is the wisdom, the wisdom of the mental obscuration of wisdom, the mental obscuration of wisdom, of now being able to liberate oneself from being a self, and now becoming a Buddha, now becoming a non-self, a no-self.
And that's the last level.
And that's the last step.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I do want to say something, and but it's not. We can do it, I guess, after the dedication. Whoever wants to say over a little bit.
Well, shall we do the dedication, and then, or you want to hear what Adrian wants to talk about? All right.
I'll be short.
Go ahead, Adrian.
So I have a bunch of books that I kind of like came, you know, to me actually through someone who Lance introduced me to. And, you know, I have about 30 or 40 titles, good books. One of them is Glimpse After Glimpse. One book that Lance recommended really highly, The Tibetan Book of the Dead, Complete Guide to Buddhist Path. You know, Skillful Grace, Green Tara, and stuff like that. And they once belonged to a library. And I guess, you know, I've read some of these books, but I want to make everybody, you know, part of this. And maybe we can work something out to where I can put this title somewhere, you know, on a list. And whoever wants to get some books, we can pay the shipping cost, and I can send them out. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, the only comment I got about that, except that it's very generous offering, and thank you very much for that, you know, on behalf of everybody. But another thing I will tell you is that, you know, you may want to keep those because to buy them again later on, and they become reference books. And you may not think that you need them now, but, you know, in 5 years, 10 years, you may want those books, you know, to refresh your memory about something, or you may want to be able to share, you know, something that's in those books with somebody else. You yourself may become a teacher, and you may want to refer back to these books. So, you know, that's a precious thing that you've accumulated there, and that's the only thing that I have to say about that.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. But at the same time, I have, you know.
Well, if you got duplicates, that takes care of that question, doesn't it?
I have this twice, you know, Glimpse After Glimpse, so I can share this.
Okay.
This. And, you know, what I was saying is that, you know, I'm not going to just like completely give them out, but make a list and make sure that somebody, you know, put the name of the person who has the book that's been shipped out to, and then that person is responsible for shipping it to the other person, and then will come back to me. Something I think that's kind of like what I had in mind.
Well, how do you suggest that, you know, people request those books?
I'm not sure. Maybe we can put like a list on our Google Drive.
You think you could do that?
Yeah, I can make that list and maybe work with Michael to upload that on the Google Drive.
Well, the first step I think would be if you can make the list, that would be a huge help, and
Yeah.
And the rest would be simple to do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I know I recognize those books, and they're great books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. I read the Glimpse After Glimpse. I read that. I probably have told you this. I read that book every day for 6 years. I mean, not every page, but I read the day entry and the day before entry. So it helped me in so many different ways. A great book. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, well, thank you all for paying attention, and I hope this was helpful to you. And next week we'll get into a little bit more stuff, chapter 3, I guess, and the contributory cause, the spiritual master. And we'll be talking about the 84,000 afflictive emotions. So get a big pencil and a lot of paper. Okay. All right. And Curtis,
Yes, sir.
I'll compile that and put that in a form that's only a few pages for you.
Curtis is trying to save on paper.
That people would appreciate it too.
Okay. All right.
He's saying that, Lance, because I printed it out and it was 20 pages.
I didn't realize it was 20 pages, but okay. Yeah, but there were big pages, weren't there? I mean, it was all big. Yeah, because it was for this. It was for this. But yeah, I can do that. It's no big deal.
The big print was nice for older eyes, though, I'll tell you that.
from across the room. All right. All right. Well, let's do our dedication, please. We can do a short dedication tonight on page 20. Everybody ready? By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikampa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones become inseparable with my body, speech, and mind. Okay. Thank you all very much. Thanks for your attention.